We've never seen a presidential family receive these sums of money from adversaries around the world. And we're just talking about a couple of countries today. I mean, if you look at the countries that this family was influence peddling in, China's probably the most reputable country on the list, if that tells you anything.
That was House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer back in May. I wonder what he said. I wonder if what he said applies to Donald Trump. Because today we found out that Trump and his family did exactly that. According to Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, which started an investigation into the money Trump was making while he was president back in 2016, Trump's family businesses received nearly $8 million from 20 foreign governments during his time in office. That is just a small sliver of what the committee members were able to uncover before Comer put an end to the investigation when he took charge of the committee. The countries that sent their money to the Trump family include China, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, India, Malaysia, Afghanistan, the Philippines, and the United Arab Emirates, among many, many others. These countries and related subsidiaries funneled their money through various Trump locations in Washington, D.C., Las Vegas, and New York. Today, Chairman Comer, with zero sense of irony, defended Donald Trump, saying, quote, "It is beyond parody that Democrats continue their obsession with former President Trump. Former President Trump has legitimate businesses, but the Bidens do not." Okay. So here's the one thing Congressman Comer did get right. President Biden doesn't have businesses. The problem for Republicans is that they haven't got a shred, a scintilla of evidence that Biden is in any way involved in his son's businesses. And he hasn't taken foreign money as president, which Trump did. And that is a big problem because the Constitution literally prohibits a president from accepting money, payments, or gifts of any kind whatsoever from foreign governments unless they get permission from Congress, which Trump never did. Of course, these days, Republicans see the Constitution as whatever Donald Trump says it is, so whatever. Joining me now is Congressman Robert Garcia of California, a member of the House Oversight Committee, who actually does care what the Constitution says. Tell us what you found.
I mean, look, what we uncovered and what we put out today is startling. It should scare any American. And quite frankly, it shows the illegal grift that Donald Trump and his family have put on this country. I think first we got to take a look at the bigger picture. What we uncovered is just a slice, like you said, of essentially the big pie, the tip of the iceberg. We were allowed to uncover about $8 million worth of illegal gifts that are barred under the Constitution, certainly from any president taking from over 20 foreign countries. Now, if we had full access, we would be able to uncover the likely millions and millions more of illegal gifts and bribes that the Kushners and the Donald Trump family took. But this, we were able to get some information, fortunately, even though Comer is trying to stop all of it from being revealed. And
so we see that China, in your report, the committee documented $5,572,000 plus in spending at Trump-owned property. So the way they were getting him this money, they spend at his properties, right? At the major properties that you looked at. You have China, you have India, Malaysia, Afghanistan. They're basically running the money through the properties, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait. But China being the biggest one actually stands out to me.
Absolutely. But let's remember, we're talking about the report was only able to get documents from 4 properties.
Right.
Donald Trump has hundreds of properties and allied businesses all around the world. And so we're getting just a small slice of an enormous corruption grift that we've got to uncover, and Comer's blocking every step of the way. And you mentioned Saudi Arabia, for example.
Sure.
I mean, think about just the amount of corruption in Saudi Arabia. Jared Kushner gets appointed the lead person in the Middle East against the desires of his own Secretary of State of Trump's, Rex Tillerson. Yeah. He's the main envoy. He puts together a $110 billion arms deal. He starts producing all sorts of deals with the Saudis. And then let's not forget, Kushner leaves the White House and just 2 months later has a $2 billion with a B investment fund paid by the Saudi government. Yeah. This is a grift, while at the same time the Saudis, the government, is pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into Trump properties here in D.C. and across the globe.
You know, what's interesting about this and what's interesting and what's scary about it is that, you know, I tend to think about Donald Trump wanting to get back into the White House so desperately because he wants to stay out of prison. But the other motivation to get back in is it's a great grift. He's making money. He's using the prestige of the presidency, and people who want to bribe him just have to swipe their card at his hotels.
I'm not sure if a lot of people remember this, but Donald Trump years ago said that if elected president, he'd be the first person to actually make money.
Yes, he did
off
say
of
that.
Being president.
He did.
And we should believe him. We've learned now, we should know that when Donald Trump says something, we should
Yeah.
take him for his word. He is making money and made money off the presidency, wants to continue to make more money off the presidency, on top of course, staying in jail.
And let's just shift just for a moment. One of the ways in which he's trying to get back in is using, obviously, racism, right? And racism against people who are coming in through the border is one of his go-to grifts. You tweet, let me read you your own tweet. Speaker Mike Johnson headed down to the border with all the House Republicans, did a little photo op, and you said Speaker Johnson and House Republicans are at the border engaging in a political stunt and sham. They don't want to actually fix our immigration system. They only want to demonize suffering human beings. I wonder if they will be reading any Bible verses during their visit. We know Texas Congressman Troy Nehls was one of those guys. He said, let me tell you, I'm not willing to do a damn thing right now to help a Democrat or help Joe Biden's approval rating. I will not help the Democrats try to improve this man's dismal approval ratings. I'm not going to do it. Why would I? Basically saying we're not passing anything. So it is just performative.
Performative. I mean, look, I'm an immigrant. I came to the U.S. when I was a young kid. I gained citizenship in my early 20s. Immigrants helped build this country. It is shameful. It is gross what the Republicans are doing in demonizing immigrants. Donald Trump is doing it every single day. He did it on the day he announced his campaign for the presidency. And he is pushing his racism, his attacks on black and brown people in this country should sicken all Americans. And on this issue of border security and the border, I mean, let's be very clear. One, we haven't had an immigration reform policy in this country for over 30 years. On President Biden's first day in office, he proposed an immigration reform package. And even right now in the negotiations, about the supplemental and foreign aid, it's been President Biden that has put forward additional money for Border Patrol agents, for technology, for actually working and providing support for nonprofits on the ground. And so there are solutions out there, but Republicans don't want solutions. They actually don't want to fix anything. They want to demonize and attack immigrants along the border.
And the thing about it is you combine these two stories together. What you have is Donald Trump and Republicans using sort of white scare, right? Just a brown scare, trying to scare their mainly white base about brown people to get themselves back into power. They don't want to do anything with that power to fix the issue. They just want the power. And for Donald Trump, he wants the cash.
And 100%. I mean, Donald Trump is essentially, in my opinion, broken American politics. He has demonized our institutions. He tries to take down and tear down our institutions, literally try to overthrow an election and an insurrection against our capital. And so this is someone that has no core. His core value is making money off the American people.
Yeah.
He believes that he should be in charge, not just be in charge of our country for good and forever, but he should make him and his family an enormous amount of money while he's doing so. And so this report today is a piece of just the scandal and the con that Donald Trump is.
Indeed. It's a grift. It's a giant grift, but there's a lot of marks, unfortunately, that are falling for it. Congressman Robert Garcia, thank you very much for your time.